How would you differentiate buddy and friend?
Buddy and friend. Hey, buddy. Hey, friend.
Well, if I told you I had a buddy versus saying, hey, I got a friend, how would you differentiate those?
I would view friend more as a long-term relationship, somebody that you have known for a while, relatively you see on a normal basis. Buddy is more like, I got a buddy. I know a guy. That's how I view buddy.
Buddy is I know a guy and we talk sometimes?
Yeah, we talk sometimes. Okay. We're cordial when we see each other. Okay. He's a buddy of mine, but he's not a good friend of mine.
Well, then I would categorize this person in my life as a buddy. We text from time to time. We're both sports fans. He'll shoot me stuff all the time. We'll have conversations about different franchises, and one of those is the Blazers. And this buddy of mine sent me this podcast 2 weeks ago. Like, hey, did you see Haynes is doing a Milwaukee Bucks podcast?
Chris Haynes, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast.
Well, he's not currently employed by an entity the way he once was, so he's really doing a lot of independent stuff.
I didn't know that. He's not anymore?
I didn't either.
No, that's why he's doing these Haynes briefs.
Oh, I did not know that.
What
happened to him on TNT? He was doing like TNT sidelines. Did that end a long time ago? Was that just this last offseason?
Yeah, it ended.
Okay.
Should have an underwear ad.
He should.
But he's doing a behind the Bucks Milwaukee thing, and it's basically around Damian Lillard. Now, maybe he'll do other players, but right now it's a Dame Lillard-esque thing. We know he has a relationship with Dame from his time in Portland.
Yes, he does.
And it's a dive in from Dame's start of his career to where it's at now so far. It's like 3 or 4 episodes in. It's really good. It's great storytelling. And in it, a couple things have popped out. Let's start with this one. This one came out, and it was sent to us by a listener, Jeff, and many people saw this and got outraged. LaMarcus Aldridge on this podcast talking about how him and Dame became cool at the end, and then once he went to San Antonio, he kind of had some buyer's remorse and wanted to come back. Here was LaMarcus Aldridge.
It's the first year I left. He's like, you got to come home. You got to come home. You got to come home. So then, hearing it from him and me going to San Antonio and I actually, experiencing it. At some point, I did try to get back, but Neil, the GM at the time, didn't want me back. Like, I was calling, trying to get back. My agent was calling. He was like, yeah, they don't want you back. So that was confirming how I felt when I left. Like, I feel like Neil really didn't want me back like that. And I feel like he confirmed it when I tried to come back 2 or 3 times throughout my career. And he never let it happen. And I even tried to go back at the end one last time. I was like, man, like, can I come back 1 year and, like, retire as a trailblazer? And they wouldn't do it.
This was Neil's response, actually. We got the audio.
Yeah, I bet it is. That sounds right. Jackass.
So LaMarcus left for San Antonio and instantly wanted to come back. Him and Dame had a good relationship. I will be fair.
Yeah.
Fentress saw this and commented, and I do think he's making a fair point. He's basically saying, maybe I'm missing something. I don't see how LaMarcus returning would have made sense. He shouldn't have left. Dame, LaMarcus, CJ would have been pretty damn good. But also, what would Neil had to have traded to San Antonio to get LaMarcus back?
I mean, I would have traded CJ McCollum for him just to balance out the roster. So,
Yeah, good point.
That's a trade that I would have
fair.
made. So, he was an all-star. CJ McCollum was never an all-star. So, he was an all-star multiple times in San Antonio. So, we could have had 2 all-stars on the team at the same time. Something we haven't had in a very long time, but I digress.
That was something that in the moment it felt like he kind of wanted to come back.
We talked about this, I think, in his time in San Antonio when they were buddy-buddy at the all-star game.
Yeah.
That they had repaired their relationship. And
they kind of flirted with returning
they
together.
Did.
And
he did a return game. We never heard that it was like this close multiple times. Now here, this is one of those like perfect. There's truth on both sides of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
For Neil O'Shea to just flat out say no, we don't want you. That's dumb. He was an all-star player multiple times in San Antonio. During that era of Blazer basketball, he had 1 all-star on his team. So LaMarcus was better than anybody else we had in that time. And so to just flat out say no, that's pretty ridiculous. There's also the majority of the blame here falls on LaMarcus Aldridge. He's the one that walked away in free agency for nothing.
Well, it sounds like on that clip, I hear a lot of I started to not have trust with that guy.
Yeah.
Which a lot of fans also developed those same feelings,
Yeah.
and they didn't work directly
Well, I
with
also
him.
think there was a lot of truth behind the scenes of he was the face of the team. Lillard came here, and in his first 2 years, he immediately became the headline star.
He's acknowledged
He
that.
was more marketable,
Yeah.
and I think LaMarcus was a little butthurt about that, and that was part of it as well. So you lose a little bit of trust in the organization. All of a sudden, you were supposed to be the face after Brandon Roy had to retire. Now you're no longer the face. Like, the majority of the blame ultimately falls on LaMarcus for walking away, because if he hadn't, who knows what that era of Blazer basketball would have looked like, and who knows what Dame's career would have looked like. I don't think you won a title, but you would have been more consistently good having two all-star players on your team, and they were a really good fit together. The one area, though, that I will absolutely critique, and I can't remember, I'll have to do when did he officially end as general manager? What year was that for O'Shea? Was that 2 years ago?
2021.
2021?
Yeah.
So going into that season, this is the one where I'm like, really? We didn't do that? That was the year where everything blew up. LaMarcus in his last 2 years was in Brooklyn, where he wasn't, he's averaging 12 a game, not playing a ton. Remember, he had the heart issue and wasn't sure if he was going to be able to play again.
Yeah, to not allow him to have...
we were 27-55 in 2021, 2022.
Well, I don't believe that was the expectation for that
No,
season.
I think that was the first year of
Chauncey's first year.
Are you telling me, really? We couldn't have got that guy at the deadline and brought him around for a couple of weeks
just to have him have the
for
retirement
a bag of chips at the trade deadline?
Yeah.
Not to trade anything to go get him.
That would involve Neil O'Shea swallowing his pride, which I don't think he ever did once.
Well,
when
my
he was in
point is, at
Portland,
some point
so.
during that year, he was fired. So where the hell was Joe on that one? Come on, Joe. Make it happen.
Here was Dame as well on that podcast, talking about wanting the Blazers to get when they got the third pick. He thought, hey, there's value in this, man. We can move this. We can win. And here was Dame talking about them after they got the third pick.
And I remember telling them, hey, if we get number one and y'all get Wemby, I remember saying it, that's perfect if we get him. And it was if we don't, it's going to be an asset that we can really use, people going to want it. We're going to be able to really do some stuff. I was cool. And that just didn't end up being the route that the Blazers chose, and it just didn't make sense, at that point if I wanted to win, it was just we could be a competitive team, but I had done that.
He also talked about watching them pick Scoot, and
he was in Paris with his dad.
He was in Paris with old Pops, convinced even to that point, much like some around the team, that they were going to trade this pick, and here was Dame talking about that.
I sat there and watched the draft with my dad in Paris. We watched it together. It was late as hell in Paris. Everybody else had laid down. Me and my dad was sitting on the couch watching the draft. And I remember, I knew my dad never wanted me to leave Portland, because I remember the first pick went and then the second pick went, and I remember him sitting there, he was like, watch, they finna trade the pick right here, watch. I'm like, bruh, they picking in 30 seconds. And the two, Wemby and Brandon Miller is off the board already. The writing is on the wall. He nah, watch, I'm telling they he thought a trade was finna pop up. I'm like, so the pick happened, they picked Scoot. And even then, I wasn't I'm out, you know what I'm saying? But I was where do you go from here? You know what I'm saying? You still got Ant, you still got Shaden, now you got Scoot, you got me. If it all fails, you're going to trade the 33-year-old at the time.
Even after picking Scoot, he still wonders, what's next? How are we going to do this?
How's this all going to work?
I love you, Dame. You're an all-time Portland legend on and off the court. My God. It's the most obvious thing. They just literally drafted your replacement.
They did. A generational talent who's too good to pass up on. He also continued there. I think he added a story where he went to bed shortly after that because, again, he was watching in Paris, so it's the middle of the night. He said after the third pick, he went to bed shortly after. His dad stayed up all night watching the rest of the draft.
Thinking a trade was
going to happen. He's like, no, I'm staying. I'm going to watch. I'm going to come wake you up when they trade the pick. And he said he stayed up all night watching the first two rounds, obviously, or the only two rounds. The draft, waiting for that announcement to come, and that announcement never happened.
And what did Cronin say either during or after that draft? Well, we think that Scoot and Dame are going to pair very well together. We think they're going to be a complementary pair.
He was asked, how is this going to work? It doesn't, and he basically tried to sell that they were going to work.
4 guards. We got 4 guards. That's just the one thing, look, you can sell me the idea that it was smart. You moved on from a guy with a bloated contract at the, 32, 33 at the time. I think he just said it in the clip. There's a lot of things and a lot of logic that go into backing up the decision that they made. I just will always have a beef with the way that they forced his hand instead of just saying, hey, let's be the grown-up here, not make this guy the villain and make him demand a trade. There's no easy way to do this. There's no easy way to break up. There's no easy way to divorce. I acknowledge that. But they knew how they wanted this to play out. They knew what his ultimate response would be, and they just kind of led him along to that point to where he's like, okay, now you got to trade me.
Also a year too late.
Yes, it was a year too late.
Because you got okay stuff for the Dame stuff. I know we've highlighted that before. it would have been better had they traded him a year prior.
If you would have just said, you know what, this isn't going anywhere. We need to find you a better home. We're pivoting. We're going younger. We're going into a rebuild. Let's maximize your value and get you to a winner. It would have been a much better offer.
So good stuff from Haynes on this Behind the Bucks series about Dame Lillard and revisiting some of the old times here in the Neal era and right after Dame got traded.